Metaphors are interesting things to translate. The question always is the metaphor that would have been understandable in the biblical context, is that metaphor still understandable in today's context? Or do you have to explain it? Do you have to turn it into a simile or to completely explain it? And what my experience is that different members of a translation committee will tend to hear these things all a little differently. Ephesians 6:14 and following gives us a good example of this issue. I'll just go through the translation pretty quickly, but it's therefore stand firm. And now how are you going to stand firm? Well, you get a series of participles. Girding your the loins, your waist in truth, and another participle, putting on the breastplate of righteousness. Now here's what's interesting. When you talk about girding your waist in truth, you know it's a metaphor. You don't actually put truth around your waist, and you don't actually physically put on a breastplate, which is righteousness. Now these are metaphors, aren't they? It is a breastplate, which is a metaphor for the protection of righteousness. Well, it continues. And by fitting the feet, or fitting your feet, another participle, in readiness of the gospel of peace, another participle, in all of this, taking up the shield of faith. Again, it's another metaphor, isn't it? Faith performs the function of a shield. It's not a shield, in which you're able, all the arrows of the evil one, the flaming arrows of the evil one, to extinguish. And he switches, the verb goes from a participle to an imperative. And the helmet of salvation, again, another metaphor, take it, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. Okay, pretty straightforward translation, a very well-known passage. That's why I was surprised a bit when I was looking at the CSB. And what they do is they stand therefore with truth like a belt around your waist. Now, if you go looking for the Greek behind like, it doesn't exist. Well, why is it there? Well, I'm guessing here, but I think that they thought the metaphor was too hard to process, so they turned it into a simile. So the truth, well, it's like a belt. Righteousness is like armor for your chest. Okay, I understand why they're doing that. I don't think it's necessary. But what they're doing is saying the metaphor is too hard to process, and so we need to turn it into a simile. What also surprised me, though, is that you go, your feet sandaled with readiness. Well, that's a metaphor, but they were okay leaving it that way. In every situation, take up the shield of faith. Again, a metaphor that they don't explain. The helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit. So I don't quite know why they felt it was important to interpret the metaphor by turning it into a simile in verse 14, but they don't do that anywhere else. So it's just a little example of the struggles that translation committees have with metaphors and how understandable they are in your current culture.